Oh no, is my through hike doomed?
Of course your through hike is not doomed. Come on, you guys already knew that. So anyways, I figured I'd give a quick update on exactly what my plans are going forward. So I already knew that in a high snow year, I was probably gonna have to remain pretty flexible. I'm a very rigid and routine person, so for me, this is definitely outside of my comfort zone. But I knew that going in, and I knew I was going to have to make an effort to be as flexible as possible. So I knew that with an early start date in a very high snow year, it was very likely I was going to have to take some time off of the trail and come home for a little bit and just let snow melt. So I knew that walking into this through hike. So what I did is I got to mile 151 and there were still closures in Mount San Jacinto. So we kind of split up, there was 4 of us. So Billy and I went back to our family, and then Fabian and Jasper ended up staying with some other hikers in Idlewild. So Billy and I decided to stay home for a little bit longer, let the storm system blow through, get a few freeze-thaw cycles, and then make our plan from there. The other group ended up going about a day or 2 after the storms, went out to Whitewater, and the preserve had already posted online that these streams were uncrossable, and so they wanted to go see for themselves. So they got there and they found the stream was possible to do. It was, definitely moving and definitely pretty high water right now, but it was knee to waist deep at most sections and it looked passable. The problem is shortly past that river crossing, you were in waist deep sloshy snow. And the way the weather looked, it wasn't gonna freeze cold enough where you could stay on top of it. So even with snowshoes and everything else, it just didn't seem possible. And so far, nobody has made it all the way from Whitewater Preserve up to Big Bear yet. So I think it was a good idea to go ahead and not do that. So a lot of people had been flipping from mile 151 or Paradise Valley Cafe up either to Acton, Hikertown, or Tehachapi. So what we decided on, we had a few options, right? So we kind of talked about them all. I think logistically though, it makes the most sense for us to flip up to Tehachapi. So tomorrow morning, Billy and I are going to head up that way pretty early. It's a 2.5, 3 hour drive from our house. So we're not gonna get there first thing in the morning. So we're gonna get there and be happy with a medium day, probably in that 6 to 8 mile range. Let's hope, maybe longer, maybe not, who knows? And go from there. So the first 2 or 3 days, I am definitely gonna be expecting to be in some snow. It's actually currently raining right now. So 6 inches is what's predicted to fall in that general area. So I thought about skipping up to Walker Pass and going a little bit further north to give myself a longer stretch going southbound back to Acton. And one of my friends, Lee, actually suggested I consider that. So I reached out I have a friend who lives near Walker Pass and she frequently drives past it. So I reached out to her for advice. Can't get better than a local. And so I asked her if I'm trying to avoid the high snow and be able to go through that section after a storm. She actually recommended that I go ahead and stay south of Walker Pass and go from Tehachapi. So I'm going with her advice. So we're gonna hit Tehachapi and hike all the way back southbound to Acton. And from Acton, then we're gonna make our next decision. Are we gonna be able to continue southbound to the San Gabriel range? Or do we need to go back to mile 151 and start hiking northbound because Big Bear is at a lower elevation than Baden-Powell and some of the San Gabriel range? So, or do we even have to take time off again? So once we hit Acton, we may even need to take more time off for another week or so and let more snow melt. So I think keeping ourselves as flexible as possible, not getting discouraged, and doing whatever makes the most sense logistically and safety-wise is what we're gonna do. So I feel very confident going through the San Gabriels with a lot of snow. That's my backyard. I live 30 minutes from the base of Mount Baldy. I can be at Baden-Powell in 45 minutes with good weather from my house. So I've done Baden-Powell in snow. I have trail ran it before, all the way up running the trail, which was a huge shock compared to the first time I did it, which had 6 to 8 feet of snow on the ground. So I feel very confident going through that section, even with a lot of snow. But from my house, I can actually, right now I'm looking at the San Gabriels, and the snow level is probably about 5,000 feet on the southern exposed side. So Baden-Powell is going to be more on the northern side, so the snow is going to stick there a lot longer and a lot further down. So I think that right now the San Gabriels, I probably need to wait a little bit on. So we're going to go up to Tehachapi, hike southbound, and figure out our next move from Acton.